Welcome into the Alabama Football Report. I am your host, RC Maxfield, and it is Sunday, and that can only mean one thing. It's overreaction time here on the Alabama Football Report. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that big red button, keeping you in the know all season long about your Crimson Tide. And, hey, that's what we're going to do on today's show as well, as the Alabama Crimson Tide didn't make it look easy against the Volunteers of Tennessee. The producer today, Matthew Peterson, Vols guy, he's got some takes too. I've got some takes on this game as well, but Alabama did handle business in terms of, well, the fourth quarter. You love to see a good fourth quarter when it comes to 28-7 outscoring the Volunteers and covering as well. Hopefully you covered over on BetUS. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. But the stars of the show in this one were definitely Bryce Young, Brian Robinson Jr., and stop me if you've heard this one before, Jamison Williams, as we all know this at this point, but the Alabama Crimson Tide have a great offense. I don't think that comes as any surprise. Really what the big surprise was in this one was why the hell was it so close for so long going into the fourth quarter. But as I mentioned, it is Overreaction Sunday. Let's get it started with the first one right here on the Alabama Football Report. The defense will be the downfall. Well, what do I mean by that? Looking at the stats from yesterday, Tennessee, they had 2 plays of over 57 yards plus. That's not the Alabama secondary we've known and come to expect, right? Looking at the overall stats for the Volunteers against the Alabama defense yesterday, 346 total yards. Now, the rushing defense did get better, but at the same time, when you could pass and have those chunk plays like the Volunteers did, 282 through the air, you're going to go through the air. And they did have 3 sacks, and we'll talk about one of those guys here in a little bit in terms of who I think is really just the key difference maker on that Alabama defense and really what he brings to the table. But overall, right, looking at this defense, it's an absolute problem, right? Like, I mean, there are too many holes in this defense to get Alabama to where they want to go. The secondary, it's a problem. Like, I think the pass rush has gotten a little better. The defensive line still scares the hell out of me, even though they did hold the Volunteers to less to 100 yards rushing. But overall, it kind of scares the hell out of me when you think about who you're going to be facing off against later on in the year, hopefully, in Atlanta, and then hopefully when you make the college football playoff, right? It scares me because you made a guy in Hendon Hooker look great yesterday. And now I want to preface this because we got producer Matt here, and I told him I would preface it. I think Hooker's actually a pretty solid quarterback, right? But Alabama is known for defense. That is what they are known for over their duration of really just existing as a football program, right? This year's a little different. They're more offensive. But there is definitely enough defensive talent on this defense for Alabama to make Hooker look not that good, right? And they didn't do that yesterday. He looked like a very, very good quarterback yesterday for the Tennessee Volunteers. But that, I think you got to give a little bit of credit to Alabama in the sense that they're the part of that reason. I think Hooker made some great throws, but there were some busted coverages. They took advantage of it, did the Volunteers, but that's on Alabama for those big chunk plays yesterday. Just abysmal in the secondary on a few plays. But let me know down in the comments, are you concerned about Alabama's D? And let's keep it PG-13 down there, okay? I know what this question says, but you know what I'm trying to say here. Type Y for yes, type N for no. I'm definitely spamming the Y button here, just because the defense has the talent, right? But it is not proven outside of a very select few of guys here, and they're just giving up way too many chunk plays. Like, I think Tennessee has talent, right? And I think they're headed in the right direction, but you're Alabama. You're supposed to not even give that team hope, and you did for 3 quarters, and then, to your credit, came back and won the fourth quarter 28-3, but you gave Tennessee way too much hope, and I think giving too much hope, just that blame, falls squarely on the defense, but let me know down in the comments. I told you we'd talk about today's sponsor of the video, BetUS. Use the promo code TIDE125 to get the best deposit bonus on the internet today, a 125% deposit bonus. Head over to chatsports.com/TideBet to get it. Listen, nobody else is doing this on the internet right now. BetUS is by far the best place to go out and bet on college football, NFL. It is Sunday, and then you got Crimson Tide basketball creeping up here. Nate Oates and the boys trying to go a little further in the tournament this year. BetUS is the best place to bet on the internet, and they're basically giving you free money. I like free money. I know producer Matt, he's a Volunteer fan. He went to Tennessee. He even likes free money. That's how crazy this is right now. All right, everybody loves free money. Get yours over on BetUS. All you have to do is go to chatsports.com/tidebet. Make your first deposit, and they will match it and then some 125%. So if you put $100 in, they'll give you 125, and you'll have $225 total to play with. But you have to use the promo code TIDE125 over on chatsports.com/tidebet. Bryce Young, best player in America. You betcha. Man, this guy's fun to watch. I was talking in the office here with a few guys this morning before NFL really started, picking up in the office. I truly believe if Bryce Young was draft eligible, he would be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft this year. He's not draft eligible, which is great for the Crimson Tide because he gets to play one more year. But look at these numbers yesterday, right? We're talking about a guy that was just elite in every regard. 371 passing yards, 42 rushing yards, 4 total TDs, had a QBR of 90.3 and a completions percentage there. 31 of 43. Just absolutely elite Bryce Young was in this one. I really love what he's bringing to the table in the sense that Bryce Young is one of those guys for me where he just takes that next step, it seems like, every game. There's a couple of throws here and there where you're like, all right, he is a sophomore, right? That's all right. No big deal. But overall, I think Bryce Young is just one of those guys where he just reminds me of Russell Wilson. He is so composed. It seems like he always makes the right read. And yesterday was one of those times where I thought, okay, maybe this is getting a little too close for comfort. And then he drops a 28-piece. You know what I'm saying? This isn't even a debate anymore, in my opinion. I think Bryce Young is by far the best quarterback and best player in college football because, let's be honest, football is all about the quarterbacks. That's what it is, and Bryce Young is the best one in the country right now. The reason he's not getting all this exposure and everything like that is because he plays on Alabama, and the reason being is there are so many great players on Alabama. People don't know if is it Bryce Young being great or is it the talent around him? It is Bryce Young being great, but hey, there's a lot of talent around him as well. But Bryce Young is indisputably the best player and quarterback in college football. If you haven't already, well, let me know down in the comments your one word to describe Bryce Young's performance against UT. Obviously, we're talking about Tennessee. We're based in Dallas, Texas. That could be construed as the University of Texas, but we don't like to talk about them on here because, well, Alabama's going to beat them by 40 whenever the hell they're in the SEC. Let me know your one word to describe Bryce Young's performance against the Volunteers of Tennessee. Mine, expected at this point, man. I expect excellence from Bryce Young, and it just seems like every week he delivers. And speaking of delivering, we deliver right here on the Alabama Football Report Weekly, keeping you in the know on the latest and greatest in the Alabama football community and really just anything going on in their athletic program in general. Subscribe if you hate the Auburn Tigers. The Iron Bowl, just a few weeks away. It's kind of crazy how quick this football season is going. But if you hate the Tigers and you love the Crimson Tide, hit that big red button and subscribe to the best Alabama football channel on YouTube. And by the way, it's free. The next overreaction I've got, Will Anderson Jr. will win the Chuck Bednarik Award. I don't know if this is an overreaction at this point, but I need to keep putting Will Anderson Jr. in every video just because I don't think people are realizing what he's doing this year. He is having a historic type season for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's just unbelievable. These were his stats yesterday from the game against the Volunteers. And listen, this is becoming a weekly occurrence at this point, right? He's tied for the most sacks in the country with 8.5 right now. He's just unbelievable. What he's doing at this point, the Hampton, Georgia native, I don't know who's stopping him. And a little peek behind the curtain here at Chat Sports, we talked about Alabama in the sense that where would Will Anderson Jr. go in the NFL draft if he was eligible this year? And maybe I'm biased because I'm an Alabama fan and I do this show and everything, but Kayvon Thibodeau, I would take Will Anderson Jr. with all those injury concerns. And let me tell you this, he's a top 5 pick in the 2023 draft. Book it. He is going to be a top 5 guy if injuries don't become an issue, right? This guy is uber talented. He's the best pass rusher in America. He's absolutely electric. He can go back into coverage, really there's nothing this guy can't do on the defensive side of the football. He is absolutely electric, and I love watching him play every Saturday, and I can't wait to watch him play on Sundays, but be patient. We got him for another year down in Tuscaloosa, and I am going to enjoy every second of it. But hey, let me know, is Will Anderson Jr. the best defensive player in the country? If you think so, then type RT for Roll Tide down in the comments below. I better be seeing a lot of RTs down there in the comments because, my goodness, I think this is just blatantly obvious at this point. He is so good, so much fun to watch. I don't know outside of Kayvon Thibodeau up at Oregon who's even in his stratosphere when it comes to best defensive player in the country. Let me know how much you love Will Anderson and think that he's the best defensive player in the country by typing RT down in the comments. Oh, it wouldn't be me if I didn't end it on a down note, right? I hyped you up and then just drastically like a roller coaster bring you down. This team isn't what we thought. And I know what you're saying, RC, they covered. How the hell are they not what we thought? I mean, they won by 28, 52-24 against Tennessee. I mean, it's one of these things where, for me, is this a clear-cut favorite team? Like, is it? Like, I know this says this is a clear-cut favorite team, but, like, that's what we thought at the beginning of the season. That's no longer the case now. I think there's a couple of teams out there that could give Alabama a run for their money. I truly believe that, and it really comes back to the defensive side of the football in the sense that, I mean, outside of Will Anderson Jr. and a couple of guys on the defensive side, I don't really have much faith. And again, looking at these numbers from Tennessee, the Tennessee game yesterday, I mean, 346 total yards, 64 yards rushing. You'll definitely take that. The passing, you want it to be a little bit lower, and you expect it to be a little bit lower. But this is not one of those Alabama teams where you look at it and think, okay, Alabama is built around their defense. That's just not the case. This is hands down, this is an offensive team. Bryce Young and this offense are the leaders of the pack on this team, and I think they proved that yesterday, dropping a 28-piece in the fourth quarter, And now, to be fair, 28-7 in the fourth quarter, the defense showed up. But it took them way too long to show up against the Tennessee team, which, again, I think they're headed in the right direction. But right now, they're not in the same stratosphere as Alabama. And you let them hang around too long, and it was a nail-biter going into the fourth, and you handled business. But the defense has to be better because the offense is showing out each and every week. But I am concerned, and I want to know, will Alabama play in the national championship game in January? Type 1 for yes. Type 2 for no. And for me, it's a big what if right now at this point because it wouldn't surprise me if Alabama just lays an egg in that semifinal matchup against whoever it is. But it also wouldn't surprise me if they run through and play Georgia in the national championship game and show them, hey, we messed up once this year. We had a little bit of flaws here and there, but we're Nick Saban. We're the Alabama Crimson Tide. We're supposed to win. I'm curious what y'all have to say, though. Will Alabama play in the national championship game in January? Type 1 for yes. Type 2 for no. We'll be back later this week here on the Alabama Football Report. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that big red button and subscribe.